Thank you for finding the NSE podcast on YouTube. To find links for our online hospitality security training, check out the video description below. Enjoy the Nightlife Security Podcast.
Welcome to the Nightclub Security Podcast, a professional resource for the nightclub security industry. Whether you're a nightclub bouncer, guard, owner, or operator, this is the podcast for you. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Nightclub Security Podcast. This is Manny Marquez, your host. I'm here with industry expert Robert C. Smith, and we are coming to you live from our cozy and wonderful little studio here in Mission Hills, California, just outside of San Diego, California. Robert, good day to you, sir.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Today, actually, our main topic that we're going to be talking about today is just terrorism awareness, and we're going to just basically skim the surface of this topic.
Don't everyone run away. We're not gonna scare you. We're not gonna put any WMD, weapons of mass destruction. We're not gonna talk about the international side of this. We just kind of want to bring awareness to a topic that I think is really important that our industry is forgetting about.
Yeah, and this topic is in conjunction with a blog post that you wrote a few days back, wanting to start the conversation around terrorism awareness. But we can dive into the actual topic a little bit later. What I'd like to do first is what we normally do, which is one, I'd like to give a couple of shout outs if I could.
Yeah, those are good.
So first one is going to be the 𝐍𝐒𝐂 group here in San Diego. They're a longtime client, and we actually just had a meeting with them this week, and so kind of just renewed the relationship that already exists. But what I'd like to mention is just what a fantastic restaurant group the 𝐍𝐒𝐂 group is, and what they're doing here in San Diego, in particular their flagship store, which is Barley Mash.
One of the things that's really unique to what they do, and if you haven't, look them up. Look up Barley Mash or look up the 𝐍𝐒𝐂 group, VERANT group. They've got about 6 to 7 venues, maybe 8 venues now, but about 6 to 7 locally in the San Diego County area. And they have a pretty unique structure, a corporate structure, and the operations manager or operations person of the whole gig is Dave Jones. But he's operationally involved with the individual bars, restaurants, almost on a daily basis. And he sees things from the entry level of the door worker, the door host, the bouncer, all the way to the general manager of each individual club. And it's really refreshing to see some of the things they do.
Yeah, I can remember the first time I actually went into a 𝐍𝐒𝐂 run venue. And they've been in the San Diego area for, several years now, but one thing that struck me instantaneously was just how the operation was run. And being somebody that's been in a GM position and has ran bars, I had an immediate appreciation for the way that their staff worked, as well as the quality of their service and product. And one thing that really struck me was the cleanliness of each venue. And it was a combination of all these little things put together that really made me take notice of them. And this was, 8 years ago. I was at Sandbar at the beach.
And on my side, you recognize the operational side of it. And when they first contacted me about a possible working relationship 3 years ago, I went into a couple of the venues and immediately noticed and I went in at night, the high time for security issues, but I immediately noticed the way they worked their door, the attire that they were dressed in, clean. They all looked clean. They all acted clean. There were no texting. There were no crossed arms. There were no benches that they were sitting on. They were approachable. They weren't the stereotypical bar club guard. And I appreciated that because that absolutely translates into how they work when an issue occurs.
Yeah, and you can just tell by looking at their operations. And if you're from outside the San Diego area, and if you ever have the opportunity to come to San Diego, please visit one of their venues because you'll learn a lot. They're well-run operations as well as they're fun to hang out.
Can you name them?
All of them?
Yeah.
We got Tavern at the Beach. We got Sandbar. We got Barley Mash. We got True North, West Coast Tavern. So this is a fantastic example of an operation that's well-run, and I'm happy to be associated with them. And we're happy for
It's the third year running that they've signed an annual contract, which gives them the full run of what we do. from visiting the venue, working one-on-one with staff, training sessions from their servers to their management team, hands-on role-play training, evaluating incidents that occur at their venue when they do occur, evaluating the report writing skills of their team, all the way to some other consulting services. It's a great contract for them, and I'm very happy to have it.
Yeah, we're happy to team up with them, and even if we didn't have the contract, Robert, I would still say they're a fantastic operation.
Absolutely.
So that's one shout out. The other shout out that I wanted to give is to our web developer, 𝐏𝐸 𝐿𝐵 at One Stop Interactive. If you guys have been to our website, they've done a fantastic job of putting together a great product for us as far as our layout, our online program.
That to me, that's the most unique thing about what they've done for us. And before we came up with the idea of the online training, I had seen several of them of different companies, different delivery platforms for learning, online learning. And what 𝐏𝐸 and his team did is come up with a totally new, different, unique way to deliver our product. And if you've not taken our courses, please do. But you'll notice that it's not a click and move program. You're going to have to watch videos. You're going to have to download and read some material. And then you're going to be quizzed after each individual video segment. And there isn't a delivery platform out there for that. They built it from scratch.
Yeah, they built it from scratch. It's a very comprehensive, a very complete program. You know, we're always looking for opportunities to improve it, which we are doing. But in all, it's just a fantastic site. And so basically what 𝐏𝐸 and One Stop Interactive, what they do is anything from website production. They produce specialized interactive applications for the iPhone and the iPad. They're very involved in experiential marketing for events and promotions. They've worked with several brands nationally as well as in Mexico. Companies like Coca-Cola, Corona, and they're doing a lot of just fantastic work. So if you have a need in that area, or if you're looking to do something different, take a look at them, take a look at their work. Maybe they can help you out. And again, that's One Stop Interactive, and I believe their website is onestopinteractive.com.
Yeah.
And then Veront, I'll put a link, but I believe it's verontgroup.com as well. All right, Robert, so let's talk about today's news topics. There's a couple stories we got on the table that we want to discuss. This first one, I really don't want to talk about, but I guess we're going to have to because you've convinced me that we should. And
I twisted your arm, buddy.
And the reason why we're going to talk about it, or I don't want to talk about it, is because it's about Justin Bieber. And I think that on a national news level, we're just expending a lot of energy discussing this guy, and I'm not quite sure he's worth the airtime,
and he's not, except he provided us with another avenue to get people thinking about being smarter and doing the right thing.
And this will tie into what we discuss as far as nightclub security. The basic story is Justin Bieber was arrested on a DUI charge
and drag racing.
So apparently him and another recording artist rented a couple cars, a Ferrari GT and a Lamborghini, whatever.
And it's Justin Bieber, so let's just not stand out. So let's get a yellow Ferrari.
Yeah, of course.
And my buddy has a red Ferrari.
Apparently, part of his entourage blocked off a corridor there in Miami in a residential area. A drag race ensues. Police pull him over. He has alcohol in his breath. He admitted to smoking marijuana and perhaps having prescription drugs in his system.
Yep.
So he was arrested.
But wait. He was at a strip club. He's 19. He's at the King of Diamonds. He's in there. He drops. What was the figure? How much did he drop there?
They estimated that he dropped roughly $75,000 in one night.
And he has a few pops.
Well, we don't know if
we're not saying he drank there, but somehow he got some alcohol in him. He snorted. He smoked. He swallowed. He did something, and now he's driving drunk. Gets pulled over. Remember, he's 19. He's in this venue, and it could be an all-ages venue. It could be 18 and up. Maybe they're serving Red Bull and water and orange juice and, those type of drinks. But somehow he's intoxicated to the point that he gets pulled over drag racing and speeding.
Well, this is something, and again, to relate it back to what we're talking about as far as nightclub security is we're talking about the liability issues that might be in place. And it sometimes feels like as if these venues that attract celebrities, big names, many of them underage, they are part of the news story, but they just kind of go away in the background, and there's there's really no ramifications on.
The first thing I thought of here with this Justin Bieber speeding in a Ferrari, intoxicated, drag racing, I thought of the gentleman that just died, he and his buddy, in the Porsche Carrera from
Paul Walker.
Paul Walker. Now, there's no allegation that they were coming from a club or that they were intoxicated. In fact, I think they've cleared them. There was no alcohol.
No alcohol.
It was just speed related. What would you think the headlines would have been had Justin Bieber crashed and was killed after leaving a Miami Beach strip club? Justin Bieber killed in a high-speed car accident. How would that look not only for the club, but for every other venue that has a high-profile person that they let and want in their venue? This is awful.
I think that as an operator, it sounds very attractive to have the idea of I have a celebrity in-house. Now, the risk is that if it's a alcohol service and there's those activities going on and you have somebody underage, I'm guessing a lot of operators will turn the other way.
There's already been documented cases with him in other venues.
Yeah, I mean, we know
underage drinking.
We know what happens, and us being in close proximity to LA, I don't think there hasn't been a time you watch TMZ and there's not a Kardashian 16-year-old coming out of some LA bar or nightclub, or so it happens.
And for me, I get it, I understand it. You're an operator. I'm a security guy. I don't see the risk versus reward on this. Getting a guy in and okay, he drops 70 G's or whatever it is. Okay, more than half of that probably went to the entertainers in the venue. But the publicity you get if you are an alcohol licensed venue, is that worth the possible sanction that will eventually come from an ABC official or a police official if he's caught? I just can't see that being an equal reward.
Yeah, I think it's something that, one, for the publicity purposes, is in part why they're doing it. And I'm not quite sure if owners or operators of these places are not thinking this through. I'm sure part of it is they're spending money, and it's probably a lot of money.
They don't think of the bad. They know, hey, we'll put out a couple of tweets. All of a sudden, a random TMZ photographers here, a random local affiliate photographers here, and our club name is now on the Nightclub Security Podcast, along with all the international news wires, and was trending this morning.
Yeah, I think probably the national news wires is going to get more traction than the Nightclub Security Podcast, but we're trying here, guys. We got downloads coming, so just the totality of the story is if I was an operator and if an underage person of celebrity status wanted to come in, I would not entertain that. I've actually had instances where people of some sort of clout or celebrity wanted to bring somebody else in that was underage, and I hold my ground. No, we're not going to do it. It's not worth my license, because I consider this is not just my livelihood. This is the livelihood of the person who owns this place. This is the livelihood of probably the landlord that you're paying rent to. This is the livelihood of every individual that you have working in your establishment, all the way from the dishwasher to your hostess.
And look, we both understand that that's Manny speaking. I feel the same way. But you, the listener, if you're a manager, general manager, security manager, owner, you're going to have to make that personal, ethical decision on your own. We just are telling you, we need you to think that, is this worth the risk? And neither of us think it's worth the risk.
Because going back to your point of what if Justin Bieber would have died in a car accident last night, and then they tied the venue to serving him alcohol, an underage, a minor. Now that venue now faces liability, and you can be sure that with a camp like Justin Bieber's camp, there's going to be a team of lawyers looking to put the responsibility on somebody.
Right.
And there's going to be a whole entourage of, business associates, managers who this kid was their meal ticket and now he's gone. So just consideration, it's obviously you're going to make the best decision for your own place, and we can only do what we can do to influence your decision. But, it's going back to the old thing of what's integrity. It's doing the right thing even when no one's looking. So
what's the next news story?
Next news story is we had a story out of
Portland, Oregon. Shooting. I'll let you set it up.
This
one hits kind of close to home. I met the gentleman once, Brian Rizzo, Mystic Gentlemen's Club up in Portland, Oregon. He's working the door. He's a big guy. His nickname was the Hulk or Hulk. So Brian's working the door. Guy comes to the door, acting a little bit off. There's people in the line. There's people in the front of the club. And this guy kind of starts using some racial slurs, some language that's not appropriate. And Brian makes the right decision, and it's not worth, calming the guy down and letting him in. And Brian says, I'm sorry, we're not going to let you in tonight. And the guy leaves. There are some other words said, and the guy leaves. The important point here is after the guy leaves, he's a 43-year-old, Brian feels funny about the way the guy was and how he left. And he makes a statement to his fellow staff members that are nearby that it just doesn't feel right. This guy's bad news. This doesn't give me a good feeling. Sure enough, about 30 minutes later, the guy retrieves some sort of Halloween mask and a gun and comes in and gets right in the front door and shoots Brian point blank in the head. Brian didn't die, but he's in a medically induced coma right now in the hospital. And he, if he does come out of it, you can imagine the medical bills and the struggle he'll have just to get back to some semblance of a normal life. The second part of the story is the shooter fires some more rounds in the club, hits a waitress, non-life-threatening, hits a customer, non-life-threatening. But as he's leaving the club, another guard and both Brian and the other guard were legally licensed guards in the state of Oregon, but the second guard has a concealed weapon permit, and he runs towards the door, eventually pulls his weapon, and shoots the fleeing suspect, taking him to the ground. Police are called, and suspect's arrested. He's put in the hospital, and a couple days later, the suspect eventually dies, succumbs to his wounds from the bouncer. So we're not going to talk about all the dialogue about should they be armed, did he have the right to shoot, blah, blah, blah. What I want to bring up is, number one, it's a very dangerous job, and we've talked about this almost on every podcast we've given you. It's a dangerous job. In this case, Brian did everything right at the door, turned the guy away. The guy came back with a gun. Some of these things will happen, random shootings, precursors will be there. We don't know the full story here, but Brian is in the hospital in a coma now.
Well, one thing that you mentioned that was in the news report was how Brian had a suspicion about the individual. And I think that any of us who have worked in the industry, you have those feelings or the little hairs that stand up in the back of your neck about an individual. And just a thought, just again, to reinforce, when you feel that, what should you do to react towards that? Not that there's anything that could have happened.
And we're going to armchair quarterback. Not only do we do this one, but for example, Manny, maybe if I feel that way, and Brian, I'm sorry, but we're going to second guess, and please don't anyone get upset, but this is how hopefully we can learn from this. We can learn from the tragedy that maybe since I feel funny about it, I'm going to station myself out front when he drives away, if he drives away, and if he doesn't, as I'm watching him from a different position, I see him retrieve his gun. Maybe I see him put on a mask and I decide, holy crap, and I call 911. Maybe the guy goes out of view and I move to a different position and watch him. I mean, remember, we're second guessing a guy I knew. I don't want you to take it wrong.
But I mean, the point being that when you have that feeling, and do I keep it status quo, or can I do something different to maybe be proactive and prevent something else?
Make myself feel a little bit better about what I felt.
Because I mean, we don't know the layout of the club. We don't know what sort of resources they had available to them. But in an instance where I don't like this, the feeling that I'm getting about this guy, I'm going to have maybe somebody observe him going back to his car, make sure he's off this parking lot. Or maybe I'm going to go inside. I'm going to check, the closed circuit television feed.
The second part of the story is, we hope, number one, we hope Brian pulls out of it okay. But they're doing a benefit for him, and I wanted to make sure we put it out there. February 27th at the Bossa Nova Ballroom there in Portland. They're calling it Rise Up for rizzo, and the flyer's pretty cool. They got the Hulk there in a pose, and they got Brian smiling off to the right side of the flyer. But it's Rise Up for Rizzo at the Bossa Nova Ballroom on February 27th in Portland. The phone number is listed on the flyer. We'll post this news article, this one here, on the show notes. So if you feel so inclined, you can call and go. If you're in the area, I looked for some sort of donation number that if you felt, because you're in the industry and you wanted to help Brian with some of the medical expenses out and some of the post-care things, I don't find it. We'll keep looking, and if we find it, we'll post it, but I'm sure you could make contact and find something a little bit different.
Yeah. And another, we definitely, on what you just said, we're hoping for a recovery for Brian and all the best to him and his family. I think another thing to talk about this story is surrounding the idea of an armed guard within the venue. It just happened to be that the suspect, the shooter, was shot by the armed guard, and we've had conversations back and forth about this, Robert. Of
we're gonna do a podcast.
This is just opening up the idea for we talked about in previous shows to do a show topic on whether or not you should have an armed guard. We're gonna have to make a stance on this, on whether or not this is something that is good or bad.
Well, when we do the podcast, and if you want to write and send us a note on your ideas of what we should address, but we'll probably end up addressing what our personal feelings are as industry experts, but then what the industry standard is, and kind of give you the pros and the cons if you decide to go either way. I think having people be informed, okay, make the decision. Then if you're smarter about that decision, then it's a better decision.
And I think another point to bring up around this, and this was the conversation that you and I had on this story before we even got on to today's recording, is just things are changing. The industry is changing, the world is changing. I don't think we go through a news cycle and not hear about an active shooter, not hear about a nightclub shooting. There's not a week that goes by you don't hear about a school shooting, and it's just kind of where things are headed right now. And as culture changes, as society changes, how does that affect our business? How does that affect what we do? And what can we do to raise the awareness and get better to hopefully prevent something like this?
And in our industry, and it's going to lead, I think, into our topic today on the terrorism awareness. And again, we're going to give a brief overview of what we feel about terrorism awareness. But I think maybe it's another separate podcast on active shooters, on thinking about what they are. How do we see the precursors for what maybe an active shooter might be at a nightclub or a bar? This is certainly the case with Brian, and his injury was an active shooter scenario. There have been many of these in our country and around the world where someone wants to respond with gunplay. And maybe this was another topic to help you understand and proactively think how to train your staff to deal with active shooters, just like today's session will be on thinking about a possible terrorist target.
So, yeah, those are our two news stories. We'll put links up on our show notes for these two stories, and also a couple links for people we gave shout outs to, the Veront Group and One Stop Interactive. But coming up after just a short break here, we're going to get into a topic today of terrorism awareness, and again, just a general overview of basically starting the conversation around this topic in our industry.
If you're on LinkedIn, you might see one of my posts about that, and the conversation today will really be to try to jumpstart nationally a conversation regarding terrorism awareness in the hospitality industry. The hotels do it. Theaters are doing it. Concert venues are doing it. Certainly stadiums and ballparks are doing it. Why do we not have the same discussion for bars and clubs in this industry?
And we'd like to start that conversation. So stick with us. We'll be right back, and we'll jump in today's main topic. We'll be right back. If you like our show, visit nightclubsecurity.com for more information and access to free resources. All right, and welcome back. So, Robert, today our topic is terrorism. And when you and I first started wrestling with how to approach this conversation and this topic, we had a little bit of a difficulty because we were trying to figure out where we're going to start with this. And I think what we decided on is just to start the conversation.
Well, and I went back again a week ago when we thought about this, and I looked at my LinkedIn post, and I looked at something else. I sent an email to somebody, and I purposely made the discussion starting. What I meant is on LinkedIn, and with this email I sent to someone on the East Coast, I said, how do we, as industry experts, people that know this industry in and out, how do we start the discussion nationally to get our industry, number one, to admit they could be a target of any sort of terrorist, domestic or international, and how do we get them to acknowledge we have to be prepared for this?
And I think that in consideration that, I mean, everyone will admit to post 9/11, that key phrase, we're living in a different world.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a matter of reality or perception, things are just different. So even after 12 years after 9/11, there really hasn't been much movement or discussion within the nightclub industry on a security front of how to tackle this topic.
And Manny said the two key words. I think one key word: nightclub industry. The hospitality industry, and we work with the hospitality industry: bars, clubs, restaurants, hotels, pubs, entertainment venues. Some of the hospitality industry has made strides. The entertainment arenas, sporting venues, NFL. This season was no purses,
no bags.
Next year, if you didn't know, 2014, 2015, I believe it might be, the Major League Baseball will be, I think there's a mandate through Major League Baseball that all baseball ballparks, you will be either walking through a magnetometer or being wanded, or it'll be a TSA style check going into a ballpark. Now, I haven't read that, but I've heard it on a couple of reliable, from a couple of reliable talking head sports guys. And I believe it. I think that's where it should be. Those are targets. Hotels have specific units designed, teams designed to train their staff on terrorism awareness and what to do just in case. But part of that hospitality industry is indeed the nightclub world, the bars and nightclubs and pubs.
So there's other aspects of the hospitality entertainment industry that are taking proactive approaches of how to approach this issue and start just being proactive about it. With nightclubs and bars, we really haven't done much.
And I don't want to fault anyone because I understand it. Most bars and clubs that I consult with have had an issue. And most of the time, depending on the degree or seriousness of that issue, even if it's just a slip and fall on the low end, all the way to the more serious end, the shootings or stabbings or deaths, depending on the level of incident, will kind of equate to their response and what we do proactively after that incident. Slip and fall, Manny, if you were an operator, you had a slip and fall by one of your workers, what would you make sure you had in your store after that slip and fall?
Mop, a sign. So, yeah, I mean, just by the nature of our business and probably as with anything, as humans, we're reactive by nature.
Correct.
And not proactive, which I think is your point that, we wait until something happens and then we start preventative measures.
From this discussion, and I just said this to Manny, and I put it out on my training sessions. I talked about it before. I really believe this, and I'll be able to tell anyone face to face should you see me at a convention or a show or at a training seminar. But I think if operators look at what they do regarding minors, underage drinking, and change the title underage drinking to terrorism awareness, that's where we should be. Meaning, every one of you listening know that you can get in trouble for serving a minor. It's a no-brainer. It's what you learn on your first day working if you've never worked in a bar. Even a bar back knows that. Even the kitchen people know that because it's been ingrained in our industry for 50, 60, 80 years. Underage drinking is not allowed. So what do we do about it? Years ago, they started training. You gave your doorman, you gave your barback, you gave your hostess, you gave your bartenders training to check IDs. And you told them, and in fact, some of you probably have even disciplined your workers or fired them or been caught in a police sting because you didn't properly or completely check an underage person's ID. It's just part of the industry. And that's where I want to take this discussion to where on a daily basis, we're talking about checking a minor and terrorism awareness.
And I think that with any issue or any problem that we have in this industry, it's over time we get better at dealing with it. So 20 years ago, serving a minor or problems with underage were probably more prevalent than they are today. Today we've gotten better of how to address that issue. So what Robert's saying is,
it was more acceptable 20 years ago. It was almost a rite of passage 20 years ago that a underage person would sneak into a bar and would drink, and there was really no big deal with it.
Yeah, it was more tolerated.
Correct.
But, so we're at a time now where this whole topic of terrorism, one, nothing really in the United States, nothing major has really happened. Probably the closest thing would be the Boston bombing at the Boston Marathon. But it's only, a matter of time to where something is going to happen. And then we'll probably have more conversation about this. But Robert and I thinking about this, we want to take a proactive approach in how do we just start this discussion. So I think that's the real point of this particular podcast is let's start the conversation. Let's see what people out there are thinking. Is there anybody out there who's actually training on this, and get it started there. And I don't think we're going to end this conversation today. I think this topic is going to be something we're going to have to come back and touch on several times through this podcast and talk more about it and get more specific. So, Robert, where are we going to go with this?
Well, you mentioned that there hasn't really been an attack or an issue for a bar or a club or our bar or club world to wake up and say, wow, this could happen. There actually has been a few.
Well,
besides the Boston Marathon bombing that did affect the entertainment industry, not so much hospitality, but a sporting event, random people watching, loved ones, that kind of thing. But a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, a Chicago nightclub with an attached liquor store nearby was the absolute target of a kid in Chicago who was of Middle Eastern descent, a U.S. citizen, didn't like the way the American stance was in Middle East, formulated a plan, did reconnaissance, took photos, took video, visited the venue, gathering intelligence on when the night would be the best night to blow this place up, what time of night would be the best time to blow this place up, and then got online and started discussing this. The FBI monitored some of those keywords that he talked about in these chat rooms and hooked up with him with an undercover agent, sold him a fake bomb, tried to talk him out of this, and the FBI affidavit's on our website. You could read it if you chose to. But he carried out his attack with a fake bomb, and then they swooped in and arrested him and charged him. This was a nightclub. This was a bar, a club where people were going, and on a busy night, he parked his vehicle with this car bomb and walked away to detonate it. 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, a terrorist plot was discovered. A vehicle, I believe it was a Nissan Pathfinder, with propane tanks in the back, with a detonation device in the back. It didn't blow up behind a building in New York, behind a theater, where people would be coming out, and they surmised that people would be coming out right about this time, and then this bomb would detonate. It didn't go off. It was discovered and stopped. So those are just 2 incidents of a true bomb-type terrorist attack that would have affected our industry directly.
But the fact remains is that these attempts were thwarted. Nothing really happened. They didn't get a lot of media play. Our awareness wasn't there.
Absolutely.
So we're still at a point where pretty much we're just waiting for something to happen before we react to it.
And I hate to say it, and I even posted it on one of our accounts, that it really bothers me, and I'm just saddened and sorry that I really think it's going to take a terrorist type of attack, whether it's an active shooter coming in to destroy and cause hell and mayhem within a bar or club because he doesn't believe in something, before our industry will wake up and decide, we better provide better training. We better consult with law enforcement. We better talk to the federal authorities about what they're doing. We better look at what Europe is doing, what the UK is doing, what the Middle East is doing, what this Indochina is doing regarding terrorist attacks on the hospitality industry.
And I think ultimately, we start with the awareness. We start with a discussion and start looking at how we can prevent or be proactive, so that as operators, as bouncers, what are we doing to prevent something like this from happening? And so, we really can't get into that whole topic of specifics today, but...
And we're going to. Just don't worry. If you tuned in because you saw this title and you downloaded or got this podcast and you thought this was going to be an instruction manual, we're going to get to a podcast for that. This one is just to truly, and Manny's he's accommodating me on this podcast, is just to try to get the discussion from you, the listeners, from the readers, that needs to be started.
So I think probably for, if I was an operator, an owner, or if I worked night to night in a nightclub, and I heard this podcast, the things that I would be thinking about would be, one is, am I a potential target? Could something happen in the place that I work, which would be on this level?
And I would believe that most operators, the ones I have talked to about this around the country, say no. Their initial response is, no, I wouldn't be a target, because why would they come to Stockton, California? Why would they go to a small bar in the north end of Georgetown? Why would they come to my place in wherever, Rhode Island? Well, don't get locked in on what the TV portrays as a terrorist.
Yeah, and I think that probably there's a range of probability of a target that would be likely versus one that would be highly unlikely. But the fact remains is that the definition of terrorism has now taken a broader spectrum. And, people, when they think of terrorists, they think of someone that's not of U.S. descent, someone that wants to harm our government.
The U.S. way, the American way of life.
Yeah, that's the target. But since 9/11, the whole idea of terrorism what we define as terrorism has broadened. So
law enforcement really gave us a pretty broad definition. And I don't just mean law enforcement, but the government put this definition out a couple of years after 9/11. And it's something similar to, and I'm not giving you the exact words, but it's something similar to an attack against uninvolved civilians for the purpose of intimidation, ransom, coercion, or to further a political or ideological goal. So if you think about that, your bar serves alcohol. If someone doesn't like the alcohol service, if someone doesn't like DUI drivers, if someone doesn't like what they perceive as decadence in your bar, pub, club, gentleman's club,
a way of
lifestyle, maybe they decide they need to put their stamp on your bar in their town and go in with a couple of propane tanks or a couple of Tech 9s with some magazines loaded to shoot up and kill 20 people, 10 people, 3 people, but injure another 50 or 100. And that's their way of denouncing your bar.
Yeah. And so, really, again, the point of starting this conversation is maybe I'm not a likely target, but I think it behooves people in our industry to start thinking about this. Well, what's the harm in thinking about this? What's the harm in having discussions with my team about what would we do? What would be potential danger points within the venue that I could help eliminate or start doing things proactively to prevent something like this from happening?
And at minimum, if you do the things Manny just suggested, it's wonderful. But at minimum, if you can get your head out of
never going to happen,
the sand, and not tell yourself it's never going to happen, that you could be, because none of you, if you've ever had a dangerous or a terrible incident at your bar where someone died, you never came into work thinking, I wonder if someone could die here. Some of you have. For example, one of my clients up in Monterey, after they walked in and really looked at what they were allowing to happen on their bar. Bartenders would jump up on the bar and dance. It's a common practice nationwide. It's done. I mean, one of the national chains, 𝐃𝐲𝐿𝐼 ugly, they made their name on that. Bartenders getting up and dancing on the bar.
They're coming to San Diego, you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Good for them. And they'll probably allow a bartender to jump up on the bar and dance. Well, in this bar, this guy realized, wow, what if one of them fell? That's a 4, 5 foot, 6, 10 foot drop, depending on where they're standing, and they could hurt themselves. And honestly, in the process of stopping that policy, changing that policy, and he was going to put a go-go riser up with a little bar around it so they could dance in a normal spot. One of the bartenders fell off the bar. Now, luckily, she wasn't seriously hurt, but he told me, he goes, "Oh my God, Bob, it happened a week after I realized this could happen." It had been going on for over a year, and he never made the change until he admitted to himself, wow, this could happen.
Yeah, and I think part of our job is expect the unexpected.
Correct.
So again, just coming back around, the point is to start the conversation. What can we start doing? I think it would be nice to hear from some of our listeners if they've actually started implementing any sort of policy or procedure around this topic.
How about one? Have you ever thought to discuss with your staff, what would you do if? Because I would love to hear from you. If you did have that discussion, I applaud you, and we'll throw a shout out to you. We'll tell people where you are and what you talked about on our next podcast.
And so I think, one, we'd like to hear from people. Is this something that you've maybe thought of passively, but just really haven't addressed it? or questions. Where would you like this direction of this conversation to go? And I think that would be a good place to start.
But when this is done, we're gonna have a couple of links on the show notes. Manny does a great job with the show notes and putting things on there for you. But I don't know. I'm not a political activist. I'm not a environmental activist. I'm a security consultant that wants to start a dialogue of something pretty important that I think could affect our country and our industry in not just the loss of life, but in loss of billions of dollars if something were to happen on a national scale at 10 different locations in 10 different cities to hurt our economy or our way of life. So one of the links that I'm going to ask Manny to, I just downloaded this PDF from the UK. The UK and Europe is very proactive on training and at least getting information out to these bars and pubs. The title of this PDF is Counterterrorism Protective Security Advice for Bars, Pubs, and Nightclubs. It's produced by the National Counterterrorism Security Office in the UK. I've sent them an email. I'm going to have some dialogue with them about how they started this and what they do and about publicizing what they're doing. But you'll be able to look at that and take a read, and it is absolutely great information about what Manny just said. What can I do? What steps I could take just to be the proactive operator to do something.
Yeah, and I think definitely a good place to start. We'd love to hear from the listeners more on this and the direction you would like this conversation to go. But, it's one of those things that I think for us not to address this or to ignore this topic would be not the right thing to do. And we just want to start the conversation. So, Robert, you have anything else to add on this?
No, I want to tell you thank you on the record that because I think initially we wanted this discussion. You wanted the discussion to go, with some techniques, some ideas for the listeners, possible solutions for some of the thoughts they may be thinking. And I really appreciate us stopping here to kind of, now we're behind the ball. We're starting to do some pushing. Our next podcast or the one after, whenever we decide to do a training session for you, will be now that ball is moving a little bit.
Yeah, I think probably the next step would be to lay out a framework of, now we're talking about it. What's next? What do we do? So on that note, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap up today's show. I want to take a short break unless you have anything else to add.
Nope.
All right, so let's take a short break. When we come back, we got a few announcements of some dates for us, and we'll be right back. Stick with us. All right, then, welcome back. Robert, we got a couple of quick announcements. First one I want to mention is we've done a lot of work with Pike Barber and the Hospitality Insurance Agency, partnering up with his team to basically
save people money, brother.
Save people money, get people to operate smarter, train your team to a standard that you're probably not at right now. But basically the premise of our partnership is clients of his who utilize our program are offered a significant reduction in their assault and battery and premise liability insurance.
I don't know how many listeners have auto insurance and they get the discounts for good driver, ABS, whatever, homeowners insurance. Pike's the first guy that I know offering true monetary discounts for having staff trained correctly, having them complete the course, having them use a policy and procedure manual.
So basically creating a program that is proactive, it better trains your staff. They've seen significant reductions in claims against policies because clients utilize our program. So it's a really awesome relationship because it's a win-win-win. And what I mean by a win-win-win is it's a win for the insurance companies because there's less claims. It's a win for the client because they get a better trained staff, better operation, and a better way to do business, which creates a safer environment for their guests and their employees, as well as mitigating liability and the headaches that go along with that. And it's good for us because we get to get out there and work with some fantastic people and train people on our program.
Let me throw in one more win for the operator. If you're a bar owner, you know what you're paying for your liability insurance, premise liability, assault and battery insurance. If I told you that if you took our course and trained your 10 guards or your entire staff, because it's the same price, you used our policy manual and truly implemented the policies we teach, that you could save 10 or 15%. So take your bill. If that's 60 grand a year, or for a larger venue, we saved one client out of Phoenix about 40 something thousand dollars annually on what they were paying, because they took our course, they cut down their losses. And Pike writes the policy, he shops it around, he gets proof that you trained with us, proof you're using our policies. You get a monetary discount. You get money back.
Yeah, so for many times when we're able to do something with a client, what they save on their insurance premiums basically pays for what we...
Absolutely. Sometimes 10 times over pays for what our services cost.
So it really is a great system, and it's a great partnership. And it's, like I said, it's a win-win-win, and it's a great way to do it. And I think we're going to see more of this, and we're happy to be a part of it. So
we got two sessions coming up next week.
In that regards, to the clients that we're working with through Pike is Wonderland
in Miami.
And then we also have _𝐏𝐸𝐻𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐻
in Orlando. So we'll be in Miami Monday and Tuesday, the 27th, 28th, and then we'll be in Orlando on the 29th and 30th train.
Did you see what the weather is like out there? Have you even checked?
I know it's not snowing, so I don't give a rat's butt about anything. As long as it's not snowing, I'm okay.
So we got those 2 dates up. Some other stuff coming up. We'll
be in Houston at the Hospitality Lawyer Conference. This is kind of a unique conference where they discuss from the lawyer's side of view, liability, premise liability, safety issues, lawsuits, what's been going on. That's in Houston on the 10th and 11th of February. We'll be there attending and doing some talking.
And then we've got a couple other dates with clients. You got a Washington, D.C. date coming up at Shadow Room.
Yep, Shadow Room will be back in D.C. on March 9th and 10th, Monday and Tuesday. Again, you can find these on our website if you're in the area and you want to come in, you want to send your staff, but that's Monday and Tuesday, March 9th and 10th.
And I'll put those on the show notes as well. And then the big one coming up for us, one of our bigger conferences of the year, is the Nightclub and Bar Conference, and that's going to be in Las Vegas, March 24th through the 26th. If you're in this industry and you haven't been to that show, you really need to make it out sometime. If you actually take the time to go to the sessions and the seminars that are offered there, the first couple of days, you will learn a lot.
It's almost overload. You go there, and I've seen operators take 3 or 4 key staff members. And this year they're even better. This year they're doing a little bit more. They've got 6 unique tracks, learning tracks, promotions and marketing, beer, food and wine, bar management, bartending, operations and management, customer experience and liability, and social media. So you could take your DJ and send him to the social media track. You could put your general manager through the operations and management, your bar manager through the beer, food and wine track. It's crazy regarding the number of educational seminars they have, and you will not find anywhere else. Look, and I understand the largest conference in the country is probably the National Restaurant Association, but that's mainly, from my attendance, that's mainly food and the true restaurants.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the entertainment aspect of it.
This is a show to go to if you're a bar, club, pub, men's club, pool hall, and you want to learn a little bit, be better at it, or find products.
So yeah, I mean, we're actually mentioning this show because we're going to be participating as one of the speakers. Robert will be putting on a session, but even if we weren't participating as a speaker and part of the education track, I would still promote this conference, because really, if you're a general manager, if you're an owner, operator, you need to make the show at some point. Sometimes we limit ourselves due to finances, but if you can have the means and the ways to get out there, I highly recommend it.
There's so much to do. We'll mention this again in probably our next couple of podcasts, and we tweet about it and we put it on Facebook. But this is the place to be, not just for learning, but the trade show, the events they have at night.
Yeah, the expo floor is probably one of the largest conventions that they'll have in San Diego. In Las Vegas.
Yeah.
They take up the entire floor of the Las Vegas Convention Center. So, anything from tap systems to POS systems to anything you can think about in this
body
industry.
tattoos, shoes, non-slip shoes, fire extinguisher systems, DJs, bubble machines, everything imaginable in your world,
and every new energy drink that ever was.
and every booze. And it's kind of a nice thing. Just as a side note, I know they're not going to like us promoting this part of it, and they're not. By the way, we're not paid by them at all. We just know this is a good show for.
I've been going for 13 years straight.
Yeah, me too.
So,
and I've been speaking every year since for them. Every new booze is out there, and you can have fun.
So yeah, I mean, on top of the educational experience, and on top of what you can learn if you actually participate in the educational tracks, it's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of great people. So check it out. We'll put a link on our website to the nightclub and bar site. Any other dates we got coming up?
That's it, buddy.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up the show for today. We thank you for listening. Oh, one more thing. If you're listening to our show and you like what we're doing, please, please, please refer us to a friend. Let your friends know that we're out here, that we're doing this. The only way we can grow and reach a wider audience is through you. So do us a favor and pass us along. We would greatly appreciate it because we'd really like to build a community, offer this resource, get the industry talking, and be there for you guys. So on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. My name is Manny Marquez.
I'm Robert Smith.
Be nice.